three regions, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. They're all in the middle of the ocean, so the ocean is what connects us, and the ocean is the main source of life. It's a coping mechanism for heaps of us because we're so far away from home.
Welcome to Dance Specific Talks. This podcast is made for us dancers, and our goal here is to inspire dancers from all over the world to become better, both on and off the dance floor. We want to provide you with a platform where we dancers can share and learn from each other. So let me introduce to you your host for this podcast, t-zer, and remember as always, by dancers, for dancers.
What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite dance podcast, Dance Specific Talks. This week is very, very special as we are going to a corner of the world that we never featured on this podcast. We are going all the way to Auckland to talk to the Multinesian artist, director, songwriter, and of course, dancer. No one else than Leki Jackson-Bourke. Now, what do you need to know about Leki? Well, he is a Multinesian, which means that his parents have different nationalities coming from different islands within the Polynesian area of the world. We're going to hear more about this in this interview. And we're also going to talk about the traditional dances, their meaning, and also the future for the Polynesian dance community in this episode. And now, let's get it going. Welcome to this interview, Leki from New Zealand.
Hey, Trees, good to be with you today. Nice to meet you.
I am so honored to have you on. I got recommended to contact you from a follower of my podcast that was like, yo, you don't have a lot of Polynesian, Samoan dancing on your podcast. And I'm like, I sure do not. And I think that there's a lot of people, including myself, that have very little knowledge about both your culture, but also your traditional dances. So I'm super, super honored to have you here. And just to kind of get people to know you a little bit better, where in the world are you located right now?
Thank you, Trees. At the moment, I'm located in Aotearoa, New Zealand, so in Auckland, New Zealand. But my parents are both migrants to New Zealand. They come from the islands of Tongan, Samoa, and Niuean, which are small, very small islands in the Pacific and the South Pacific Ocean. So yeah, I'm of Pacific descent, but I live here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Today, when I was studying you and checking a little bit about your background, I learned the word Multinesian. I never heard the word Multinesian before. Can you explain a little bit of what that have meant for you growing up?
Yeah, Multinesian is kind of a term that is used to describe people who are from more than one island in Polynesia. So in the Pacific Islands, there's three regions, Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Polynesia has got the islands like Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Hawaii. So when you're from more than one island, you're often referred to as Multinesian, or Multinesia, yeah. So it's basically just talking about the different islands that you come from. And lots of us here in New Zealand, we're from different islands. So in New Zealand, the largest ethnic minority or community is the Samoans from Samoa, and then it's the Tongans, Cook Islands. So lots of small different island communities live here in New Zealand, mainly in Auckland.
There must be so many languages, songs, dances, and traditional things that is connected to each and every island. So what a rich culture to be a part of. It's not just one, it's many of them. I had to check Samoa on the map because I was like, I know it's somewhere in the Pacific, and I saw it's like on the line of time. It's
That's right.
literally
From an
on the
international
line.
dateline in the equator. So Samoa is referred to as the center of the universe because it's in the middle. It is literally in the middle of the whole world, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in the middle of the world. It's on the international dateline. Yeah, so that's Samoa. It's one of the biggest islands in Polynesia. I'm part Samoan as well, and also from Tonga. Tonga is one of the last remaining, I think it's the last remaining kingdom in Polynesia. So we have a like royal family and a hierarchy and monarchy and stuff.
Wow, that's so dope. I also read somewhere that you are not divided by land, but you are connected by water.
That's right, because all our islands are very small, but they're all in the middle of the ocean. So the ocean is what connects us, and the ocean is the main source of life for us as island people. We everything gravitates and centers around the ocean. The ocean is sacred to us.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting. I saw one of your interviews where you described that in your childhood, it was not completely easy because of belonging to different cultures, but then also living and growing up in New Zealand, which also have the white ethnicity as well. Can you describe a little bit about how it was for you growing up, being Multinesian, but also
No,
having grandparents, that you want to honor and all of that?
it was very, very hard and difficult to navigate because in New Zealand we have a European education system. We have to speak English here in New Zealand. It's an English speaking country. But most of my ancestors and my so I'm called a first generation New Zealand born Pacific Islander. So my parents and my grandparents are all migrants. They all came here from their islands. Most of them don't speak proper English. They speak, like very limited English. So my generation, we're kind of like, we represent the like first generation to kind of come through the education system and to be able to speak English. So it was really hard because at home you have to speak, your indigenous language, and I have three. And then at school I have to speak English. But there's a certain generation of Pacific Islanders, like my dad's generation, who they just think English is the pinnacle of success. So they just want to speak English. They forsake our island indigenous language, and it's because of the way that they were raised and the time that they were raised in. They were raised in quite a racist, time when they were beaten for speaking their language. So they don't take pride in their language. But I feel like my generation is claiming that back, and we're really proud to speak our language and to use it in the spaces that we're in. And for me, I do that a lot through dance. Like dance is my language.
Yeah.
That's the language. That's the universal language where I can marry all three of my cultures together in one.
That's so dope. And I know that I read on your Instagram that you call, your generation the generation of change. And what is the biggest change? Is it that you now feel that you take back the pride of the culture and the languages, or what does that mean for you?
A lot of that, but it's also we are a generation that is like, we have so many tools now. We can operate both in the mainstream or European world as well as our own cultural worlds and communities. And I think that's the biggest change for me, is that we are reclaiming our narrative and not letting other people tell us who we are. We know who we are. We know where we come from. And that's one of the main lines in the Disney movie Moana. Moana is from Polynesia. If you've seen the Disney movie Moana, the princess, one of the main lines in her song is, we know who we are. We know where we come from. And that's something my generation are reclaiming, because it's been lost for a little bit through my parents and their generation. And now we are, reclaiming that, rewriting our narrative, and just taking control of who we are as people and being proud of their culture and their cultural heritage.
Yeah, and you're doing a lot to make that happen. It's in one interview it's hard to cover everything, but from just one standpoint, you talk a lot about your community and what it means for you to bring theater to spaces that maybe don't have so much of it. How have your journey into theater, daring to stand on stage, but also to dance and sing. How has that journey looked for you?
It's been very difficult because, like, I mean, guess like a lot of communities, our community doesn't really value the arts here in New Zealand. So for my parents and stuff, they didn't see this as a career path. This is, typical story of any artist is our parents and our families don't understand what we do. And so my community really didn't understand what I did and what me and my friends were doing. And a lot of the times they don't take us serious because they think, they think we're just like jumping on stage telling jokes, but we're not comedians, we're storytellers. We're so much more. We use comedy, yes, but we use our art form to really push and address some of the issues that we have in our communities. Being ethnic communities here in New Zealand, it's very hard to navigate a New Zealand system and way of life. And so we use our dancing and our singing as a coping mechanism for each of us, because it's the way that we connect back to our cultural heritage and our ancestry and our islands, because we're so far away from home. We're like all the way across the ocean. We just yearn and long to like connect back to our lands where we actually belong and where we descend from. And so yeah, that's been a big like driving force in my work, and especially in the types of dance that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to the dancing, since you have heritage from three different islands, I can just imagine the amount of dances and meaning, and how that connects with the certain culture from a certain island. Can you tell a little bit about the dances that you do and what they mean?
Yeah. I trained in performing arts institute, and I actually trained in Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian, Niuean, Cook Island, and Indigenous Maori New Zealand Aotearoa dance. They're all very different, but they all look the same, if you know what I mean. So there's like a lot of intricacies and nuances that are in each culture. And a lot of our storytelling is through our hands. So we do a lot of like dance like this, and like Samoans, they dance like this. And in Hawaiians, there's very straight lines. In the Niueans, there's like claps and stuff. It's a lot of our storytelling is done through the hands. For a non-Pacific person, they look at our dance and think it's very feminine because, like, the male masculine should be like this. But for a lot of our men, we dance like soft. We dance like this, but we also dance strong. If you see the haka that's performed by the All Blacks, that's one of our dance forms for the Maori culture. But there's a lot of different variations in the Pacific where we do that dance form as well. And if you've seen how the Hawaiian men dance, it's very graceful but it's strong. And that's kind of like how we dance here in the Pacific. We have a lot of, I guess the perception is and this is because of tourism. A lot of people think we just have the hula skirt and the shaking hips, but that's really just a stereotype. It's right. Our dance is so much more than just hula skirts and shaking hips, and a lot of it is storytelling. It's how we documented our culture. It's how we kept our language and our culture and our history alive, because the songs that we sing are hundreds of years old from our ancestors that were written back in those times when they were alive. So for us, it was a form of keeping our culture alive. Like a lot of different cultures, we use our storytelling through our dance and through our arts, through our songs, through even the costuming that we wear in the Pacific as well. And again, they're all very different depending which island you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had the honor to arrive in Australia when I was 18, and like the first evening it was like a rugby game between Australia and New Zealand, and like
I,
as a dancer to see the haka dance like live by
yeah,
the New Zealand team was just like that made my evening. Didn't care about the rugby game whatsoever, but the dancing was just very powerful, and I'm happy that like we have these actors from Aquaman to The Rock that are all like trying to bring this more attention. But when you started, what was one of your favorite dances and something that meant a lot for you when it comes to the storytelling of this dance?
one of my favorite dances is from an island in the Pacific. It's called, well, it's not an island, it's several islands. It's called the Kingdom of Tonga. So Tonga is one of the islands in the Pacific. It's a kingdom. And one of their dances is called the Laka Laka. So the Laka Laka is a traditional dance. It's the females are always on this side, the males are always on this side. It's always performed in straight lines. What it is it's actually an internationally recognized art form. It's protected by UNESCO as a World Heritage art form. And what it is it's a combination of Tongan dance movement with traditional oratory that is sung. So everything is composed and structured in a certain way, and it documents the history of the event. So the Laka Laka is the national dance of Tonga. It's very beautiful if you watch it. A lot of people will find it boring because it's very slow and it's very particular. We dance like this. So we do like a lot of movements like this, and then but it can be performed by hundreds of people, any age. It does not. The thing I love about our Pacific dance, it does not discriminate between, ages or size. You don't have to be a skinny ballerina to dance our dances. You can be the biggest person in the world or the tiniest person in the world, and there is a place for everybody to fit in our cultural dance, and that's reflective of our society and how we operate as Pacific people. But one of my favorite dances, it's called the Laka Laka. It's from Tonga. Yeah, so there's a lot of resources online on YouTube and also on Google if you Google the Laka Laka. Yeah, it's a very old traditional dance. A lot of our young generation, they find it boring, but I love it because I'm an old soul, and I can just feel my ancestors and the connection to the people who have passed on before me through that dance. It's like a dance that transcends time and space to bring us, to represent the here and now, but it also honors the past and the future. So it's a very old traditional dance that has not changed. It withstood, time. And the reason why is because the former queen of Tonga, she didn't want people to modernize it. She wanted Tonga to go into the 21st century stamped with tradition and how we traditionally done stuff. So we've maintained that dance form for like hundreds of years, and it's really beautiful to watch. It reminds me of if you ever watch like a David Attenborough documentary. You know how they have the flamingos and all the flamingos move. It's very much like that, because the Tongans wear big feathers in their costuming. And so when we move, we do this dance move called the teki. The teki is when we move our head like this. And it's like a feeling, like a spiritual feeling when we like move like that. But we all move in one. And it looks so beautiful when hundreds of people do it at the same time in unison.
Wow, that's amazing. Like, I think that we talked way too little about the way of passing down stories and history through dancing. We always talk about the written language and how we can preserve our cultures through written language, but actually what you're describing now, it's the physical language, and it's about feeling the history through our bodies. And I know that in one of your interviews talking about the spirituality and feeling connected to ancestors and the ocean, you talked about a place called, let me see if I won't butcher it, Fupio?
Pupil, yeah, that's a Niue.
And what happened there when you arrived there? What happened within you?
It's on an island called Niue. So there's another small island in the Pacific. Niue is one big island, one small island, sorry. In the middle of Niue in the bush, there's an area called Fupiu, and it's the area where the Christianity first came to Niue. So a missionary came and he was stationed in Fupiu. And because he was an outsider, well, he was of Niuean descent, but he had come back from studying at missionary school. They were trying to kill him. So they were trying to, kill him before he Christianized everyone. He stayed in this area and he prayed and he invited the Holy Spirit to come. And that area is it's a special place in the island of Niue. So I went there in 2015, and there was this really ugly dog. So there was a dog, and it was like kind of deformed, and I hate dogs, and it kept barking at me, and I was like telling my sister, I was like, "This dog's annoying us. What should we do?" And then it looked at us and was like, it's like it wanted us to follow it. So I followed it into the middle of the bush for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then it stopped at this certain area in the middle of nowhere. And then it just ran away and it disappeared. And I went there and I felt the spiritual like force, and it just went. And I fell on my knees and I cried, and I was in the middle of nowhere. And all I could hear was the ocean and the trees. And then I saw the sign and it said Fupiu. And I was like, this is the birthplace of Christianity in our island. So it was it was a spiritual awakening. It was so beautiful. And I just ever since that, I fell in love with my culture, and I went and learned all my traditional dance. And I was like, I need to come back. This is where I've been called to come back and to serve as an artist. Because before that, I didn't really care, to be honest.
Yeah.
I knew my culture was there. I was like, oh yeah, great. But it wasn't like anything to me. I didn't really care until I went into that area and I felt something. Yeah. I can't explain what I felt. It was just like a big my chest was like crushed, and I was like, oh my God, I thought I was gonna die or something. Like, what's happening to me? But yeah, that's why.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that it's interesting how sometimes we have these moments in life that becomes turning points for us in the direction that we take forward. And you definitely from that point on embraced a part of yourself that had been long forgotten. And it's a beautiful story. So thank you so much. And when we talk about the dances, one thing that I find so interesting with, as you also mentioned, there's a lot of similarities. One thing that I see when I look at different Polynesian dances is that it's a very wide stand. Men stand in a squat position that looks quite hard to keep up. Is that the hardest part of the dance, to just keep that strong stand? No. Or what is it? What is the hardest part?
That's why we all have nice thighs over here on this side of the world. Everyone's got nice thighs. So that position or that stance, we call it taulalo in Tongan. So it means like to stand low, and it's kind of the stance of the warrior. So you stand like this. No one can move you because you're grounded. Your feet are connected to the earth. You stand like this. It's very different from traditional or kind of stance. So our stance is like this. It's very low.
It's very low.
So you really need to engage your core when you do Pacific dance. Yeah. And it's about alignment. We align with heaven and earth. Everything is connected, and everything is done in alignment. So it's your heaven, earth, past, present, future. That's how we dance. Everything is it's very spiritual, and we dance like that because it's like a low connection to the earth, and it's how we dance. So for Pacific women, they never open their legs like that. That's rude in our culture. They have to be closed-legged. But the men, we open wide stance. And you see it a lot in the Hawaiian dancing if you watch Mary Monarch. Also in the Samoan dancing and the Tongan dancing. And we've been dancing like that since we were kids, so your thighs get used to it. That's why we're good at rugby.
I think that it is really cool to hear about it, because in a lot of cultures we talk about like the chakras, you know, like connecting the root chakra to the crown chakra, and it sounds to me like this is another form of that, how to ground yourself, be in alignment. And when you perform, you mentioned that you can perform some of these dances up to hundreds of people at the same time. What is I know it might be hard to describe, but what is the feeling when you are doing something so much in synchronization with each other in one of these dances?
The feeling is just, it's very beautiful, because you understand that it's not about you as an individual. It's about your service to your community. When we dance, we never dance alone. Even in our solo dances, you never dance alone, even though you're a solo performer sometimes. But a lot of our dances, like, to be honest, a lot of our dances are painful to dance. Physically, it's sore to like dance like that. But when you are standing like in the stance and honoring that, you're feeling and experiencing the same pain as the person next to you on both sides, the person behind you, the person in front of you. It's all about connectivity and being connected. And that's representative of like our islands. We're connected by our ocean. So it's about, we experience the pain together, the beauty together. It's all communal. It's all connected. It's all about community vibe, I guess. And it is really hard to perform, and it's so sore when you perform that. But honestly, I feel so comfortable and so blessed to dance next to, some of my dances that I do. I dance next to my uncles who are in their 80s and my aunties who are in their 90s. And then I dance next to my nieces and my nephews who are like 5 years old. So it's all about intergenerational connectedness, because that's one of our main like values as Pacific people, is our culture. And our culture, our families are connected. Like there's no one really operates on their own. Even if you don't have siblings, you're part of like the community, or you're part of someone else's family. So our dances are really representative and reflective of that, of the community, and and we like stuff big scale. We do everything because we live in villages and stuff. So we perform everything like, I guess. And in New Zealand we have competitions. So we have competitions for the kind of like, the diaspora, I guess. So there's like the largest Pacific dance festival in the world is called Polyfest. It's a high school competition in New Zealand where all the schools, they come off groups of like 60, 80, 120 groups, and we perform and we compete to a criteria. So that's like a whole buzz. It's different. And the cool thing is like for some of the groups, they bring their parents at the back to sing. Everything is live. So we rarely dance to like CDs or to like recorded tracks. We sing and dance live. Like that's where the heart and spirit is in the singing. And we all have different types of singing in our islands. So it's cool when you sing, you choreograph to some of the songs that we compose for that.
And is it often that, I mean, as a dancer, I never have to sing normally. Like I have not gone my entire life without singing, because I'm a dancer. I chose a profession where I can keep quiet and just express with my body. But in these Polynesian dances, it seems like the dancers are also singing at the same time. But maybe I'm wrong. How does it look like for you?
No, we sing at the same time. That's part of the package. That's part of singing and dancing is all part of the storytelling. It's all the form of storytelling. You cannot dance the Polynesian dance without knowing what the words mean in the song. So you can't go on YouTube and learn the haka because you don't know what it means and you don't have a connection to the words. Everything is I wouldn't say it's literal, but a lot of the actions are inspired by the lyrics. So it can be metaphorical, it can be literal, it can be abstract, but a lot of our dancing is done to our singing and our lyrics and our poetry. Because like I said, that's our form of history and documentation. We don't have a written culture. Well, we do, but it's not as like established as the European cultures. We're not writing people. We sing and dance our songs and our history. And in some of our old compositions, they have like specific dates and specific things that happen in those times. And those have survived for thousands of years, and we still dance them, and we try not to like change and modernize it. But there is definitely a lane for contemporary Pacific. That's another genre that we explore here in New Zealand, because we're not because New Zealand is different and it's a modernized country and contemporary. Now we have the influence of we have like cross-cultural contemporary Polynesian. We have different ways of performing our dance here. So we still have our traditional, but we have contemporary as well.
Wow, that is so much to take in. I feel like I need to go back and see this by my own eyes. And you also mentioned a lot about the costumes. Like when I did my research, I was just like astonished by like the 50 different types of costumes that mean different things. And like what are some examples that you can talk about when it comes to what you wear and what is the meaning of that in comparison with the dance?
So with a lot of the Polynesian and Pacific dancers, the costume is very specific. You can't wear, if you're going to perform certain dances, you have to wear certain costuming, if that makes sense. And like I said, with our costuming, that's also another form of documentation. So we have where in the Pacific, it's very well known to have tapa cloth. Tapa cloth is this brown kind of like bark cloth, where we have like kind of like hieroglyphs, like the Egyptians. We document our patterns and our stories through that, and we wear that in the dance, and that's what we sing about and sing as well. So if you didn't know, like tattooing originated in the Pacific. It's from the word tatau. Tatau is like the indigenous art form of tattooing. So a lot of Polynesians, they have tattoos like this, and these patterns are what we wear in the costuming as well. We wear it because they have names and they have different stories behind each one. And some patterns are specific to some regions. I'll just show you another one.
Yeah, I know I saw some videos of your feet and your ankles. It seems to be a very traditional place to place your tattoos as well.
I put my tattoos here on purpose because my feet are what I dance with.
Yeah.
So I use these to dance, and this is what grounds me to the earth and connects me to our earth. And so these are the patterns that from the islands that I come from. If you can see that.
For people that are listening, that you have to watch this video because these tattoos are beautiful.
Oh, thank you. These were done by an artist named Tyler Vaial here in New Zealand. She's a Samoan tattooist. And these patterns, we put them on our costuming. So they're not random patterns that we just make up. They have a meaning behind them. They have different names. And when you're from Polynesia, that identifies where you come from as well. They'll be like, oh, they're from this region because they have this certain tattoo. It's kind of like tribal, but we've kept that tradition alive for thousands of years, and we're still doing it now today. So yeah, it's quite common to have those motifs placed on our costuming as well. And then the resources we use, everything is from the land. Everything is, traditional from the land in Polynesia. But in New Zealand, we use, because it's not as accessible, we have a lot of synthetic materials and materials from the Chinese, like that we use, like the plastic and other stuff. Yeah, the traditional costuming, we use like the feathers from the bird, we use the bark from the tree, we use different shells from the ocean. Yeah, lots of different types of costuming.
Yeah. And do you think you will get more tattoos?
Yeah, this is not finished. I'm going to get a full arm like Maui on Moana.
I love that.
This particular one is called a kaulima. So this is only a band, but usually we get the sleeve. But the traditional Samoan men and women, they get the full body tattoo.
Yeah.
In the lower area.
Oh, in the lower area, that's also interesting. Like I saw a lot on the stomach and down on the thighs,
Yeah.
calves. Is that a
And
reason
that
for that?
was one of the most painful experiences ever. But it reflects the pain and the beauty of our culture.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not ready to get one yet. But
You have to earn it. You have to earn it.
you have to earn it, and I'm not there yet.
Well, you are though earning a lot of how do you say, a lot of knowledge and wisdom around your culture. I do know that you won, but that you got awarded the Pacific Corporation Foundation for Young Pacifica Male of Influence Award. Woo! And what was that about? And can you tell a little bit about what you did after receiving that award?
Yeah. That was an award I was nominated for in 2020. That was just an acknowledgement of my work that I done here in the community in Auckland. And I guess the big project I did right before I won that award was it was a digital documentation project. So I created, this was in response to COVID. We had COVID hit the community early 2020. About halfway through 2020, I got some funding to put on an arts project. So I wanted to make a big intergenerational performance. So I did with 240 people, and we we got people from the island of Niue, so all of Niue descent, from all over New Zealand, South Island, North Island, and we brought them all together, and we performed a big traditional cultural item. But it was, we did four items. We digitally documented it, and I recorded and interviewed some of the elders in our community. And it was to keep our culture alive for the next generation, to show them these are the past composers and choreographers who have now died. And so I was honoring the people in the past, connecting them to the present and the future, bringing them all together in one. And I wanted to do that because we went through COVID and we went through such a traumatic experience. We needed the arts and the dance world to heal our community and bring us back together, because we weren't going to come back together for anything else. We came back together to dance and sing, and that's what brought our community back together. It was our culture and our love for our culture through performing arts. So we use that to bring everyone together, to come together as one, heal the community. And yeah, it was so beautiful. It's one of my favorite projects I've ever done. And because like some of the people now in those clips, they've passed away. So they've been recorded and documented forever, and they will always live on. So that's what I really loved about that. And I guess that's why that award came at that time, was because of that.
Yeah,
And because, to give you some context, the Niue cultures and the language has been described as one of the fastest dying Pacific languages. So our language is almost extinct. There's not enough speakers, native speakers that speak it. And because the majority of the population live in New Zealand, they're migrants to New Zealand, about 20,000. And then back home on the island is less than 2,000 people. So you can see the stats are not very good because the majority of people live in New Zealand. They don't speak the language. So we're losing our culture. So this was one of the ways to revive and bring back a dying culture, I guess. And that's why it meant so much to me and why I was so passionate about the project.
Yeah, and you also continued like with writing and directing, and I mean, it's one thing to do a dance and to be a dancer or a choreographer, but it's another thing to write like a whole play or like a whole project. What was some of your biggest learning moments for you personally doing that?
Some of my biggest learning moments is you're not gonna please everyone with the work that you do, and who cares? You don't have to. You just have to be confident and tell your story before someone else tells your story. One of the biggest learning curves for me would probably be, I guess, the word authenticity, finding authentic content but being truthful to my experience of their culture, because I wasn't born and raised in my island. I was born and raised in New Zealand. So to some people from my island, I'm an outsider, even though I'm from there. Like, you know what I mean? So a lot of that is coming back to authenticity and making sure that my content is done properly. And I have to collaborate with cultural advisors and people who can advise me on what I don't know. Because I don't know everything. I think I know everything, but I don't know everything. I just know something. And that's enough for me to... one of my biggest things is my personal insecurities and my cultural identity do not outweigh my ancestors' sacrifice. For them to come and migrate here to a new country, they came here because they wanted a better life for the future generation. And I'm the future generation. And so I have to pull my own personal insecurities aside because I have to honor the sacrifice of them coming here. And that's going to be the same for my kids and my grandkids when they grow up. Like I don't want them to be like me. I want them to be better than me, and to make this world a better place when they leave here. And so I really think they're going to get there if they know their culture and they learn the culture, and they can hold on to it, regardless of where they are in the world.
Yeah, because it's not just the problem of dying out languages, it's also the whole climate change thing where like the sea levels are rising and
oh my gosh, don't get me started.
yeah, I mean, so we also have that thing where I don't know a lot, but I have seen some documentaries about like where are all these people are gonna go. Like if they belong to these islands, they have their homes there.
Yeah.
You know, it's the Western world that has pushed the climate change. Are they going to take care of the people that have less and less land to live on? Is that a huge discussion within your community, and how does that sound in your circles?
100%. That is at the forefront of everything we're doing right now. That is the most pressing issue for us as Pacific people, is that the rest of the world doesn't know us. They don't care about us. The people in Europe, the people in America, they don't care about us. When we're not even on the map to them. For us, we're at the forefront of climate change. We're fighting to keep our islands above sea level. And all these big corporate companies are just, like putting stuff into the atmosphere, animal agriculture. There's so many things and it's all from corporate greed. And because of that greed and that human imbalance, we're facing the repercussions of that. Like we're fighting every day. Some of our islands are already sinking. We already have climate refugees. They can't live on their islands anymore. They're uninhabitable. They have to move to new islands. And, are we going to keep moving and running away from where we came from because of all these other big countries? Like, this is the fight that we have to fight constantly on the daily. Yeah. Like people in the islands have been moving to New Zealand because they can't live in their island anymore. Because you would have seen in the beginning of the year, Tonga got like a volcanic eruption, a tsunami. There's like every like couple of years or every year, there's like something that happens. There's like a tropical cyclone or there's something. The water is warming up. Everything is like, it's so hot there. The ozone layer is being like stripped back. There's so many issues in so many ways that climate change affects us. Because our islands are very tiny and they're in the middle of the ocean. We are like impacted directly. And like a lot of these big countries overseas don't even see that and don't even recognize that. And a lot of these governments, they come and they have these international climate change conferences where they like to look good and they like to say all these fancy words and like present all these documents and slideshows. But at the end of the day, it means nothing if no one's going to change anything. And so we really can't rely on them. We have to do it ourselves. We have to keep fighting. And that's what we do. And that's why we keep performing. And that's why we keep telling our story. That's why we're such proud and resilient people, and we won't. If we're going to drown with style and grace, and we're going to drown in all our costumes and everything, and we're going to drown singing and dancing, but we're not going to drown because we're going to keep fighting until the last day. Yeah.
Wow. That is it's strong because it's, as you say, in the West and in Europe, where I'm at, we always talk about like, oh, in the future, when the sea levels are rising. And funny enough, I live in the Netherlands, which is 2 meters below sea level. But they, instead of taking care of the problem of climate change, they just put up a wall out by the ocean to
Yeah.
block out the water. And so, yeah, basically, the Netherlands wouldn't it's not supposed to exist at all. And still, there
Yeah.
is not enough discussions about the climate refugees, as you say, but also the extreme weather conditions, the overfishing,
Mm.
everything that's going on. So, what would
Even
you?
the fact that you guys can build a wall, like
Yeah,
we don't have the capacity and the like money to do that.
no,
I wish we could build a wall and keep our island safe from the rising ocean, but we can't.
no.
Like we don't even have that option or that, like, that's we're literally fighting with what we have with ourselves.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
sad.
There's so much on how do you say it, on stake, or there's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much that this future is going to endure. What would you say would be some of your biggest hopes and wishes for the future?
My biggest hopes and wishes, I guess, and this is aligned with the company that I work for, Pacific Dance New Zealand, is that we create a global presence in the world because so many people don't know where we are and that we exist. They don't know the Pacific. They don't know like our small islands. We're just little dots on the map. And so I think, yeah, that is one of my biggest like hopes is that
Mm.
the world knows who we are and that knows that we exist and knows that we are fighting and struggling to stay alive and to stay afloat.
Yeah, and the craziest part is that not even history can explain how these strong men and women got to these islands more than like power of the will, So it's like to lose this heritage, to lose these cultures would be, yeah, just crazy in this world to lose all of that. So I agree with you, and we need to keep on raising the awareness. And one of the things that I know that you're doing is the specific Pacific Dance Festival. Can you tell a little bit about that, and what is the meaning? When is it taking place? How can people get to know more about it?
Yeah, so we have the Pacific Dance Festival. It's an annual festival we have here in New Zealand, run by Pacific Dance New Zealand. That's the company and organization. It's a charitable trust here. Basically, what we've done is we've commissioned and curated a whole festival of artists who are all of Pacific descent. So the pieces and the dance shows and stuff, they all vary in theme and in genre. And the cool, exciting thing is we are now moving it to a digital platform. So we have a few live events, but a lot of it has been pre-recorded. We made some dance films, which are really exciting. And what this means for us is that the world can see what we do here in New Zealand and in the Pacific. And so there's a lot of young choreographers. There's some more established and older kind of like senior choreographers. But it's a very wide range of different styles and genres, contemporary, traditional. You're going to get a whole range in our festival. And it's really exciting because nothing else like this exists in the world. This is the only place you're going to find it. So if you want to watch and want to join us for the festival celebration, celebrating the Pacific culture, then we have a website, pacificdance.co.nz. pacificdancenewzealand.co.nz. You just Google search it and it'll come up. And all of our festival will be uploaded on there for an international audience. So yeah, there's some very exciting pieces. I've been involved in some of the filming and then and working with some of the artists who have choreographed. And we got lots of different pieces, solo pieces, duets, trios, big group pieces. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing festival. I'm really excited.
And it starts now in June and it goes on all the way to July. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's right. So we're launching in June and it will finish in July. So there's different events happening throughout the weeks.
I am so excited. I definitely gonna check out the online videos, and I'm gonna link everything in the description below so more people can see it. And what an amazing talk. I feel like I have learned so much, and I feel so honored to have had you on this call. In the end of my interviews, I always have something called fill in the gaps, where I start a sentence and you end with one word or a end of a sentence maximum of your choice. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right,
Let's
cool.
go.
When I dance my traditional dances, it makes me feel
blessed.
When I, as a teacher, teach my dances to the younger generation, I always try to
honor.
Nice one. And one of the biggest things I learned in the last year about myself has been
it's okay to make mistakes.
Boom. I would love for people to actually follow you online and you know, follow your journey. Where can people find you? Is there anyone you want to shout out? This is your time. The mic is yours.
Yeah, shout out to everyone at Pacific Dance New Zealand, our organization, and to Tristan, who's there in the background. He's our digital content person. If you want to find me, you can follow my work on Instagram. My handle is at the Lion, Lyon of Judah. So that's my Instagram handle, the Lion of Judah with a Y. And I post most of my work on there and most of my dancing and all my side projects on there. So you can follow on there. Make sure to follow us on Facebook. We're on Facebook and Instagram, Pacific Dance New Zealand.
That's amazing. I will link everything in the description below. We can't wait to keep on following your journey, keep on dancing, keep on spreading awareness. The world needs you and your community. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Don't forget to click subscribe, comment below, and give us a rating or review. We have a Facebook page, YouTube page, and we are on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and all the other podcast platforms. We also have an Instagram, so don't forget to tag us in your favorite episode and share it with the world, because we read all of it.